On this week's Vaticano, we propose the first of 2 episodes collecting staff's choices for the best pieces on art, food and faith so far in 2015. An organ finds new life at the House for American Priests in Rome. We step in stride with the Pontifical Swiss Guard for this year's ceremony to welcome new members of the Corps and speak with a young chef from among their ranks. Mummies on display at the Vatican Museum, and plenty more from inside and outside the Vatican walls. Now on this special summer edition of Vaticano.
Breathtaking with its art and marble construction, this chapel for U.S. priests in Rome holds an unexpected treasure.
This chapel was built in 1633, if I'm not mistaken, and the choir loft in which we're sitting was built in 1735. It was a later addition. Originally, this chapel was a sisters' chapel, so there was a convent here of visitation sisters, and at some point or another they decided to add on this area. I'm not quite sure why that was. And then somewhere in the 1860s, there's some debate about the origin of this instrument. Somewhere in the 1860s, the American bishops who ran this, when this house was the North American Seminary and not the residence just for priests as it is today, at some point in that time, they purchased an organ from the man who was at that time the most famous organ builder in the world, whose name is Aristide Cavell-Cole. He built some of the most important instruments in the world, for example, at Notre Dame in Paris, at Sacré-Cœur in Paris. But there's only one Cavell-Cole in Rome, and that's this organ that we're in front of right here. But this does have some stops which were unique to Cavell-Cole that he pioneered. So he pioneered the French horn stop, the oboe stop, the clarinet stop, both of which we have, and he pioneered one particular stop called the harmonic flute. And that's here, and it's really kind of it's the gem of the instrument.
An organist needs to apply his instrument to a variety of styles and types of music. He gets to know his instrument very well. Sometimes the contact with the instrument gets physical, but these are not meaningless scribbles. Rather, real history is recorded here.
As a result, on this organ, all the men who've been involved with playing the organ, and then many of the men who've been involved in singing, have physically scrawled things into the side of the organ. In fact, right where you're standing is the first one that mentions me. But if we look over here, on May 30th on 1940, it says, "Music packed, organ closed in preparation for departure of the college for America." And it says who are the choir masters. Well, what happened then? Well, the Americans had to leave because World War II was looming.
A worthy instrument for a worthy liturgy, the organ is the queen of liturgical instruments.
Certainly the organ maintains a particular pride of place, and that's a phrase that's used in documents from the Holy See to address to the entire world. So it's not just specific to places like France and Germany, which have a long and noble organ tradition. It's also extended to places like Peru or Australia. Anywhere where the church is, the church brings her culture, and part of that culture is her musical culture.
Showing just how much they enjoy a good meal, the Pope's Swiss Guards have released a cookbook. It's called Buon Appetito: Recipes, Stories, and Celebrity Portraits. Written by 2 Swiss Guards and edited by their colonel, the idea was born from one of them, who used to be a cook himself.
This
happened during the recruitment process. I was lucky already in Switzerland. I wrote 2 books, the first one when I was 18 years old. They were both very successful in Switzerland. Then I had the idea, well, why not do it here with the Swiss Guards, if I'm a Swiss Guard here? I wrote my first cookbook for my dissertation titled Around the World with 80 Dishes. It was a great success, and it was broadcast in different television channels and mentioned in newspapers. And after this cookbook, I started my cooking degree, and when I finished the degree, I wrote my second cookbook. Then I went to the military, and now I'm here.
Ging es ins Militär und jetzt bin ich hier.
The Swiss are known for their exquisite cuisine and desserts. Although he now lives in the Vatican City, his favorite dish is a Swiss one.
Mein Lieblingsmenü zum Beispiel ist eine Käsekuchen, wie des
My
Kommandanten.
favorite dish is cheesecake, like our commander. I didn't look for a dish for the commander, but I already had a draft and I wrote a recipe out of it, and I thought it would be good. The same as the daily routine cooking for the Swiss Guards, it's already laid out. I didn't just take a recipe and type it out. I took the base of recipes, and from those, I wrote the cookbook.
Diesem habe ich nachher das Kochbuch geschrieben.
The Swiss Guards themselves cook a Sunday a month so that the religious sisters who prepare their meals can rest. The book is now available online at weberverlag.ch.
The Swiss Guard just welcomed 32 new men into the corps. Events for the new inductees to the Papal Army were celebrated through the first week in May. First, Holy Mass in St. Peter's Basilica in the early morning hours on May the 6th. An opportunity for family members, relatives, and friends of the Swiss Guards to join them in prayer. Final moments to recall the spiritual importance of their work before making an oath to protect the Pope. Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin celebrated the Mass, a liturgy enriched by the music of a Swiss choir. That afternoon, the culminating moment, the swearing in of the new Swiss Guards.
500 years ago, they gave their life for the popes when 147 guards died during the Sacco di Roma. So we do this every year to swear that also we would give, if it's necessary, our life for the popes.
This happens every year on May the 6th, since on that day in 1527, the sack of Rome took place. It marks the most significant and deadliest event in the history of the Guard. 147 members of these men's predecessors lost their lives while fighting the army of the Holy Roman Empire in defense of Pope Clement VII. Today, they would do the same if the Pope were threatened.
We swear and you swear on God. We swear that we will defend the Pope and that we will obviously do that returning to Switzerland. We not only defend the Pope with deeds, but also from gossip, or when he is criticized, we defend him with words. You remain a Swiss Guard for life.
The ceremony took place in the San Damaso courtyard in the Apostolic Palace of the Vatican. They swear with one hand on the flag and one hand lifted up into the air, remembering the Holy Trinity and the three patrons of the Swiss Guard. The new guard, Bircher, doesn't just follow in the footsteps of other Swiss, his is a direct succession in the family.
I have a special relationship with the Swiss Guard, since my father was a Swiss Guard in the years 1977 to 1979. So even as a small child, I learned what the Swiss Guard does. Also, among my friends, there are a lot of ex-guards. So I played with the thought of joining since my studies. And when I began my military service, I've already served for some time in the military, so I thought to myself, the culture, the language, and the religion attracts me. So I'll do that. I will dedicate myself for 2 years to the church, so I decided to join them. I've been here for a year and don't regret a single minute of it.
The proximity to the Pope himself also brings its share of surprises.
Our service brings us close to the Pope. One day in the morning, at 4 a.m. after he got up, he came out and he recognized me and said, "Ah, you're here again, on duty." He went back in and gave me a little gift with chocolates and sweets and said, "Per la dolcezza nella vita," for sweetening your life. That made my whole week. That was great.
The Swiss Guard currently consists of 120 men, a reinforced company.
Stay with us. After the break, listen to a Mass with musical elements from the Aztecs. Welcome back. This is Vaticano.
We have two selections that you're going to hear. One is by Joseph Julian Gonzalez. It's entitled Mesa Azteca, and it's based on traditional Aztec music. And the conductor is Dr. Teresa Russell, and she's from Southwestern in California. And the second selection will be conducted by the composer. His name is Mark Hayes, and in the United States, he's a very prolific composer. And this is his new Requiem that was recently premiered in New York City in Lincoln Center.
Aztec tradition and a Catholic Mass would not normally be found in the same sentence. In Rome's Basilica St. Ignazio, these two cultural influences were united through music.
The portion that I have the honor to conduct is the Mesa Azteca by Joseph Julian Gonzalez. He was an artist in residence at our college, Southwestern College, in San Diego, California, and commissioned to write this piece. It's based on the Mass, and it has Kyrie, Gloria, Gradual, Sanctus, Agnus Dei, and Ite Missa Est, but it not only incorporates the traditional Latin, but also the pre-Columbian Aztec language Nahuatl and some Spanish. I think what they experience and why it's so uniquely compelling is it's traditional and it's familiar to us, but then there are unique pre-Columbian Aztec percussion instruments that give it a very much of a big energy and different colors, and it also incorporates several languages. So for an international crowd like you have here, it will inspire not only the familiar, but the unfamiliar.
Gloria in excelsis Deo, laudamus te.
3 languages are united in this contemporary masterpiece, and some exotic instruments found their way into the composition.
We have a teponatzli, which is a slit drum, and it's pitched, and that'll be played. We also have a wahuatl and some chachajotes, so there's some shakers and a big Aztec drum. You'll also maybe think there are birds in here because there's some bird whistles. So there's some ambient nature sounds in 2 of the movements of the piece. So a lot of unique colors with it mixed in with the traditional neoclassic, I guess you would say.
Then a Requiem was performed, the European premiere. It was conducted by no less than the composer himself.
I wrote a Requiem. I've chosen 6 movements from the traditional Latin text and actually use both Latin and English. And so I will be conducting that, and this is the European premiere of my Requiem.
The conductor tried to let the audience feel the divine power through the experience of music.
The music I wrote, I tried to write very beautiful melodies that are peaceful and restful, yet they're not boring. There's excitement in the middle movement of this called Dies Irae, which is just very dramatic in contrast to the other things. But what I hope the audience will feel is just this deep emotion, and they'll be connected with a power that's higher than themselves, which I believe lives inside of each one of us, that just says, all is well. You can experience peace despite whatever's going on in your life. You don't have to die to need to let go of things or to be at rest. So I hope that they feel that sense of tranquility and inner peace when they listen.
Mummies. At the Vatican Museums, they're busy solving mysteries from ancient Egypt, shedding light on the history of 60 animal mummies and 7 human mummies in their collection. They also have 2 specimens they thought were children, but studies have shown they are false and were made artificially in the 19th century.
A mummy for Egyptians is an important value, represents the possibility of entering a dimension from another world or divine world. The restoration of these small mummies has started within the project and with surprising results. Instead of being a mummy of Egyptian times, we found that was done in the 19th century, probably in an English-speaking environment for a market of antiques. During the 19th century, it was a highly sought souvenir for private collectors. That's the reason these false mummies were created. They are highly similar to the originals that became collectibles in museums in Europe.
Soltanto di privati, ma anche di musei che si andavano formando in Europa proprio nel XIX secolo.
A team of 10 specialists spent almost 2 months using modern research techniques to verify their authenticity.
All these researches and new data are born out of curiosity with other museums and experts to exchange data and to develop a comprehensive study in which to file the information so other institutions and museums can perform the same studies and verify the authenticity of their mummies.
The restoration of the mummy lasted about a year. This research has explored and advanced new techniques for this type of restoration.
After gathering all studies, X-rays, chemical analysis, one microscope analysis, and high-resolution images, we realized we were in front of a manufactured object, built with the parts from original Egyptian objects and aftermarket parts, as the architecture of these bones belonged to medieval young adults, and the embalming techniques are not ancient.
The mummies, along with the research results, will be displayed in the museum soon. In the heart of the church, 7 men have a unique task. Monsignor Daniel Gallagher is the only American among them.
I'm responsible with my colleagues for writing all of Pope Francis's Latin. Anything that has an official statue in the church, whether it be a decision to create a new diocese or appoint a new bishop or accredit an ambassador, these letters all have to be written in Latin. And so our job, my job, and the job of my 6 colleagues is to constantly keep writing that correspondence, those letters that Francis is directly responsible for signing, or the Cardinal Secretary of State is responsible for signing on the Pope's behalf in the Pope's name.
Their work is evident in documents like papal bulls. Say this one, read at Mass 3 years ago in the Basilica of St. Peter in Chains, when Cardinal Donald Wuerl took possession of it as his Roman Church. Latin isn't dead, but sometimes it just needs a little tweaking for the modern world and media communications.
Latinists spend a lot of time thinking about how to keep the vocabulary both faithful to the tradition, what we call the corpus or the body of Latin literature, but also fresh for internet and Twitter and Facebook and all of that. So you do have to create new words, but you can do them by going to the sources and finding ways in which Cicero may have expressed this or that and trying to give weight to what already exists in the Latin language.
Monsignor Gallagher's days are spent as few others on earth, speaking, reading, and writing Latin. So the decision to do away with Latin during this year's Synod of Bishops in the Vatican took him by surprise.
I think it's a disappointment. I know, well, it is a disappointment that the language is not being used so actively because it did have a place in the Synod of Bishops for so long. However, to be honest, the disappointment that I experience from that is somewhat limited in that I see other places in which Latin is thriving. And I see places in which Latin is thriving also outside of the church. And I'm extremely pleased about this because people are learning about the importance of Christianity for history precisely because they chose to study Latin as a language. And you can't study Latin as a language without reading Augustine and Jerome and all these Christian authors, in addition to Cicero and Seneca and Livy and Virgil and Terentius.
So the language of the church remains alive for future generations to come.
Stay tuned. In a few moments, you can see an ice cream dedicated to the Pope. Welcome back. This is Vaticano.
The heart of the Vatican Museums, the Sistine Chapel has never been so well protected. 3 years of study, design, and application have led to the installation of a state-of-the-art preservation system.
So this is the first time we apply this technology and actually works perfectly well.
These new lungs are now in place. Air conditioning and purification units controlled automatically by 70 sensors located throughout the space. They keep CO2 and dust levels down while maintaining chapel humidity and temperature to optimal levels.
There's 3 aspects which are important for this particular job. The one was that the system was extremely advanced. So it's a very high technology level of the system which has been developed. The second one is energy efficient. It's extremely important in our days to have the system which are very, very green and energy efficient. And the third one, the system was extremely intelligent. So intelligent means, for instance, that we have applied for the first time in this kind of installation video camera who can actually measure number of people, count the people inside the chapel and adjust airflow and adjust all the system parameters just to meet the number of people which is inside.
Each year, the museums in the Sistine Chapel are visited by roughly 5 million people. Each person brings dust and heat that can be detrimental to the priceless works.
If you look at this art in the Sistine Chapel, it's just breathtaking. But ironically, it's the act of breathing, or exhaling carbon dioxide, that was destroying the frescoes. We have the technology that we apply today, the advanced technology that is preserving the frescoes, and it's keeping the chapel open for generations to come. Well, we expect it to last a long time, and we've actually future-proofed it. So we have the ability to keep with the technology as the technology advances and as the Sistine Chapel evolves over time.
The Sistina also has a new LED lighting system, which make Michelangelo's artistic masterpieces shine in full splendor.
Right around the corner from St. Peter's Square is a hard-to-miss ice cream shop. Among the home and handmade specialties, one sticks out, a special ice cream created for Pope Francis' coming extraordinary Holy Year.
We have it in our DNA to innovate and elaborate good recipes, in our history and also in the development of new products. We thought, therefore, of creating a new product for the Jubilee that's not just a publicity stunt, but that complies with the excellence of all Herdera products. We have taken the best milk from local produce. We've taken the best cream from the country, and limoncello, organic, produced with biological and organic excellency. But we have decided to reduce its alcohol content so that it can be enjoyed by all, children, adults, and seniors. Dal bambino all'adulto all'anziano.
This particular flavor is titled Cream of Fresh Milk and has a homemade limoncello sauce. The colors correspond to the Vatican flag, yellow and white.
It has the colors of the Vatican, yellow and white. It was very important to us that for the Jubilee it would have the Vatican colors. We did not want to make it about advertising or an advertising spot. We wanted to show our clients that this has a penitential character. It has lemon for purification and white for candidness. The whole thing is excellence. Made in Italy from local producers, and we sell it at the price of the other ice cream shops.
Once the days get hotter in the late spring and summer, this refreshment will be welcomed by tourists, and certainly not just the Catholic ones. "250 Germans came to Rome on a mission. This is the final rehearsal of a German high school choir, preparing themselves for a special performance in Rome.
Die Matthäus-Passion von Johann Sebastian Bach.
The Passion of St. Matthew by Johann Sebastian Bach. A colossal piece with 2 choirs, a children's choir, and 2 orchestras. Such a work can only be sung with backup. That means that the parents formed a choir as well to accompany then the children's choir, and then 2 orchestras which are enhanced with alumni of the school who followed us.
Die aus alter Verbundenheit zur Schule immer noch mitfahren.
But such a monumental performance needs preparation.
Many months, always twice a week in the afternoon, always with a lot of enthusiasm. I hope it will pay off. I was really surprised. You always think classical music is boring, but that was not the case at all. We were surprised how much fun it was and that we really became a group with a good dynamic. That is very important, especially for a piece like this.
The group comes from a German high school in the city of Essen, which focuses on the musical education of the students. Students can obtain a special high school diploma in music. This particular performance has become a tradition in the Eternal City.
Wir sind seit 1995 alle 5 Jahre.
Since 1995, we have come to Rome every 5 years and have a concert of the Passion of St. Matthew. The idea was born in 1995, well, actually 2 years earlier, since a musical piece like this needs preparation, and was born by a Monsignor who worked for the papal press office and a former alumni of our school, Monsignor Mattes, who has passed already.
Monsignore Mattes ist mittlerweile verstorben.
It's phenomenal, this pulsing city. Everywhere there is life. No matter in which small street you look, there's always lots of people out and about, and people are very helpful here. It's great.
Ist schon toll.
We traditionally always come here during Lent, since in fact the Passion should only be performed during Lent. It fits this time and also this place.
In diesen Ort und in diese Zeit.